ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 5, Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. So we are at text 5. So here, Vidurji, he has approached Maitreya Muni at the origin of river Ganga, that is Haridwar, and there he is discussing the further spiritual topics. But the way he approached Uddhava, was a very, very intimate dealings and intimate discussions with Uddhava. But with Maitreya, he is approaching as a very ordinary man, sadhaka seeking spiritual knowledge. Text 5. करोति कर्माणि कृतावतारो यान्यात्मतन्त्रो भगवान् त्र्यधीशः यथा ससर्जाग्र इदं निरीह संस्थाप्य वृत्तिं जगतो विधत्ते. Translation.
O great sage, kindly narrate how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the independent, desireless Lord of the three worlds and the controller of all energies, accepts incarnations and creates the cosmic manifestation with perfectly arranged regulative principles for its maintenance. Purport: Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead from whom the three creative incarnations, namely the Purusha avatars, Karnar Navashayi Vishnu, Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, and Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, expand. The whole material creation is conducted by the three Purushas in successive stages under the external energy of the Lord, and thus material nature is controlled by him. Thinking material nature to be independent is like seeking milk from the nipple like bags on the neck of the goat. The Lord is independent and desireless. He does not create the material world for his own satisfaction as we create our household affairs to fulfill our material desires. Actually, the material world is created for the illusory enjoyment of the conditioned souls who have been against the transcendental service of the Lord since time immemorial. But the material universes are full in themselves. There is no scarcity for maintenance in the material world. Because of their poor fund of knowledge, the materialists are disturbed when there is an apparent increase of population on the earth. Whenever there is a living being on the earth, however, his subsistence is immediately arranged by the Lord. The other species of living entities, who far outnumber human society, are never disturbed for maintenance. They are never seen dying of starvation. It is only human society that is disturbed about the food situation and to cover up the real fact of administrative mismanagement take shelter in the plea that the population is excessively increasing. If there is any scarcity in the world, it is the scarcity of God consciousness. Otherwise, by the grace of the Lord, there is no scarcity of anything. Hare Krishna.
Yes, so here Viduraji, he is praying. Karoti karmani krutavataro. He's saying, my dear great sage, kindly narrate how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is how he has created this cosmic manifestation, Sasarja. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that Lord Krishna has the creative incarnations and especially the Purusha Avatara. So these Purusha Avataras, they are very beautifully described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Vishnu's Trini Rupani Purushakyani Atho Viduhu. Ekam tu Mahatas Srishtihi, Dvitiyam tu Anda Samsthitam, Tritiyam Sarvabhutastam, Tani Tyatva Vimuchyate. So this is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 2.251. So Vishnu's Trini Rupani. There are three personalities, Vishnu's Trini Rupani. And through these three Vishnus, Karanodakshai Vishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and Kshirodakshai Vishnu, the manifestation or the creation of the material universes takes place. So material universe is not independent in its nature, right? There is personality who is controlling the material nature, Mayadhyakshena Prakriti. And to think otherwise is a very foolish thought. And Prabhupada says, actually, why this material nature is. So, first is who created the material nature? That is the Supreme Lord. Then, why this material nature is created? Why this material nature is created is because for the illusory enjoyment of the conditioned souls. So, as soon as the conditioned souls desires to enjoy separate from Krishna, away from the Lord, this material world is created to facilitate his that propensity. And just like the law, just like the parents will make the full arrangement for the child, even if the child is gone for a picnic out of, he's very angry with the child and the parents, and the child goes out, but still the living parents will make all the arrangements wherever he is going. Similarly, although the living entity comes to material world, the living Lord makes all the arrangements even in the material world, and thus these material universes are full in themselves. There is absolutely no scarcity of anything, what to speak of food. Prabhupada says there are so many living entities who practically outnumber the human beings but there is scarcity only in the human society, or in the society which is intervened by the humans, right? Just like in the corona times, you may see most of the humans were locked inside with a mask on their mouth. All the animals, they were free. Okay, you don't see a huge number of animal dyings or anything like that. They were free, but the humans were locked inside. And so many things, just by not the human control, was minimized in the nature. So many things just got so set right. There where we could see there were peacocks on the roads of Bombay, and they were just moving around because there were no human interference. So Prabhupada says, therefore, although the other species outnumber the human society, there is no question of maintenance for them. The maintenance comes only in the human species because they have forgotten God consciousness. They are given a higher responsibility, and if there is only scarcity, there is the scarcity of God consciousness or Krishna consciousness. So this is Srila Prabhupada quoting, the original uh, discussion between his and his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, that there is only scarcity of God consciousness. Text 6. यथा पुनस्वेख इदं निवेश्य शेते गुहायां सनिवृत्तवृत्तिः योगेश्वराधीश्वरैकतत् एतद् अनुप्रविष्टो बहुधा यथासेत्. Translation.
He lies down on his own heart, spread in the form of the sky, and thus placing the whole creation in that space. He expands himself into many living entities, which are manifested as different species of life. He does not have the endeavor for his maintenance, because he is the master of all mystic powers and the proprietor of everything. Thus, he is distinct from the living entities. Purport: the questions regarding creation, maintenance, and destruction, which are mentioned in many parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam, are in relation to the different millenniums, kalpas, and therefore they are differently described by different authorities when questioned by different students. There is no difference regarding the creative principles and the Lord's control over them. Yet, there are some differences in the minute details because of different kalpas. The gigantic sky is the material body of the Lord, called the Virata Rupa, and all material creations are resting on the sky or the heart of the Lord. Therefore, beginning from the sky, the first material manifestation to the gross vision down to the earth, everything is called Brahman. Sarvama Khalva Idam Brahma. There is nothing but the Lord, and He is one without a second. The living entities are the superior energies, whereas matter is the inferior energy. And the combination of these energies brings about the manifestation of this material world, which is in the heart of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
So he lies down, the Supreme Lord, on his own heart, spread in the form of the sky. He expands himself into many living entities, and he does not endeavor for their maintenance or his maintenance, because he is the Yogeshwara and proprietor of everything. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that there are different discussions about the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material universe in different parts of Srimad Bhagavatam. Later, similar questions would be asked. And there will be some similar but slightly different answers to all these questions. And why? Because Prabhupada says, because these questions are in relation to the different millenniums or different kalpas. Different kalpa means different day of the Supreme, day of the Brahmaji. And because, so basically there is no difference between the Lord's control over the material world, Mayadhyakshena Prakriti, and but some minute details may change because their description varies across the kalpa. So whereas the modern history talks about last, at best 2000 years or 3000 years, Srimad Bhagavatam, we can access the history not only at the time of creation, but even at the time of different days of Brahmas. And therefore we cannot just approach Srimad Bhagavatam with a stereotype mindset, thinking that, oh, this was explained like this differently in first canto and slightly differently in second canto. The basic principle, Lord controlling the material nature, will remain the same, but the manifestations will differ because we are talking about different kalpas. Further, Srila Prabhupada explains now. So, this is one important point, different kalpa. Another point Srila Prabhupada explains here is that how is the what is called as the heart of the Lord. So everything is actually Brahman because everything is coming from Brahman. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahman. So within that Brahman, there are superior energy, inferior energy, and the living entity, they are the superior energy, whereas the matter is the inferior energy. And combination of these two energies will create the manifestation in this material world, and which is also the heart of the Supreme Lord. Just a very simple example is just like, you know, the children, they go to play on the banks on the seashore, and just like the child is very dear to the parents. Similarly, the castles that make on the banks of on the seashore, that is also very dear to the parents. They will be so excited. Oh, we have made. So, child is a superior energy. The sand is an inferior energy. But when the child engages in making the sand castles, which are going to be destroyed in the next wave of the ocean, right? They are very, very temporary. In that sense, they are quite illusory also. But the child is happy, and the Lord and the parents, when they see child and they see some castle, this and that, the parents also, the castle is also very nice to the parents. Okay, so similarly, the living entity, although the superior energy, when involves with the material nature, everything is considered as heart of the Supreme Lord, and therefore it is Shete Guhayam Sinivritta Vrittihi. Text 7. क्रीडन् विधत्ते द्विजगोऽसुराणां क्षेमाय करमाणि अवतारभेदैः मनो न तृप्यत्यपि शृण्वतां नः सुश्लोकमौले चरितं चरितामृतानि. Beautiful verse. Translation.
You may narrate
Translation:
also about
You
the
may narrate
auspicious.
also about the auspicious characteristics of the Lord in his different incarnations for the welfare of the twice born, the cows, and the demigods. Our minds are never satisfied completely, although we continuously hear of his transcendental activities. Purport: The Lord appears in this universe in different incarnations like Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, and Narsimha, and he manifests his different transcendental activities for the welfare of the twice born, the cows, and the demigods. The Lord is directly concerned with the twice born or civilized men. A civilized man is one who has taken his birth twice. A living entity takes birth in this mundane world due to the union of male and female. A human being is born due to the union of the father and mother, but a civilized human being has another birth by contact with a spiritual master who becomes the actual father. The father and the mother of the material body are so only in one birth, and in the next birth, the father and mother may be different couple. But the bona fide spiritual master, as the representative of the Lord, is the eternal father because the spiritual master has the responsibility to lead the disciple to spiritual salvation or the ultimate goal of life. Therefore, a civilized man must be twice born, otherwise, he is no more than the lower animals. The cow is the most important animal for developing the human body to perfection. The body can be maintained by any kind of foodstuff, but cow's milk is particularly essential for developing the finer tissues of the human brain so that one can understand the intricacies of transcendental knowledge. A civilized man is expected to live on foodstuffs comprising fruits, vegetables, grains, sugar, and milk. The bull helps in the agriculture process of producing grain, etc. And thus, in one sense, the bull is the father of humankind, whereas the cow is the mother, for she supplies milk to human society. A civilized man is therefore expected to give all protection to the bulls and the cows. The demigods, or the living entities who live in the higher planets, are far superior to human beings. Since they have better arrangements for living conditions, they live far more luxuriously than human beings, yet they are all devotees of the Lord. The Lord incarnates in different forms such as those of a fish, a tortoise, a hawk, and a combined lion and man, just to give protection to civilized man, the cow, and the demigods, who are directly responsible for the regulative life of progressive self realization. The whole system of the material creation is planned so that the conditioned souls may have the opportunity for self realization. One who takes advantage of such an arrangement is called a demigod or civilized man. The cow is meant to help maintain such a high standard of living. The Lord's pastimes for the protection of the twice born civilized men, the cows, and the demigods are all transcendental. Here, a human being is inclined to hear good narrations and stories, and therefore, there are so many books, magazines, and newspapers on the market to satisfy the interests of the developed soul. But the pleasure in such literature, after it is read once, becomes stale, and people do not take any interest in reading such literature repeatedly. In fact, newspapers are read for less than an hour and then thrown in the dustbins as rubbish. The case is similar with all other mundane literatures. But the beauty of transcendental literatures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is that they never become old. They have been read in the world by civilized men for the last 5,000 years and they have never become old. They are ever fresh to the learned scholars and devotees, and even by daily repetition of the verses of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, there is no satiation for devotees like Vidura. Vidura might have heard the pastimes of the Lord many, many times before he met Maitreya, but still he wanted the same narrations to be repeated because he was never satiated by hearing them. That is the transcendental nature of the Lord's glorious pastimes. Hare Krishna.
Very beautiful verse. Kridan vidatte dvijago surana. क्षेमाय कर्माण्यवतारभेदैः मनोनुतृप्यत्यपि शृण्वतां नः सुश्लोकमौलेर् चरितानि विष्णु. So Maulehi is the Supreme Lord. You may narrate also about the auspicious characteristics of the Lord in his different incarnations for the welfare of the Dvija, Go, and Surana. Dvija is the twice born, Go is the cow, Surana are the demigods. Manonutripyanti, our minds are never satisfied completely, although we can continuously hear the transcendental nectarian pastimes of the Supreme Lord. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the human civilization is meant to become a Dvija. Dvija means one who takes birth twice. So the first birth happens the biological birth, that is by the union of the father and mother. But Janmana jayate Shudraha, samskarat bhavet dvijaha. That everybody is born with a Shudraha. And what to speak of Kali Yuga? Kali Yuga is Kalau Shudra Sambhava. But the civilized man is supposed to move on from just the first birth and go ahead and find the bona fide spiritual master and take the another birth and become qualified as a Dvijaha. Dvija means one who has been born two times. So whereas the parents, they are very, very important. At the same time, with every material body, there will be material parents. But the spiritual master, one who awakens one's transcendental realization, so then only one can become Dvijaha. And therefore, civilized man always works on becoming Dvijaha or becoming, identifying a bona fide spiritual master and taking shelter at the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. The next is Go, the importance of cow. So Prabhupada says cow is the most important personality animal in developing the human body to the perfection. And especially the cow is considered very, very important because there are so many, the ingredients of the cows, they will be used for the yagya. There will be go rasa, the pancha go will be used uh, for the performance of the yagya. And the most important is the human, for the humans is the cow milk. And this cow milk one has to take very regularly so that one can develop the finer tissues to understand spiritual advancement. So Prabhupada makes this point time and again that cow's milk is very essential for developing the finer tissues of the human brain so that one can understand the intricacies of the transcendental knowledge. Right. So many times, as a devotee, we just accept anything and everything as prasad, and of course prasad is prasad and prasad is transcendental. At the same time, there is possibility that we may not be transcendental while accepting the prasad, and therefore cow's milk is considered as very important. And similarly is the bull's endeavor in the farm, and the cow's milk, and from that sense cow is called as mother and bull is called as father, go mata. And thus, civilized man is expected to give all the protection to bulls and cows. Third is Suranam. Suranam are devatas. So there is a Sura and Asura. So the Suras, they live on the higher planets and they live a life far superior to human beings. Prabhupada says their life is far more luxurious and beyond the comparison of the even the modern people what we are living. And this is all about the whole system of this material creation is planned in such a way that the conditioned souls may live happily for self realization. Right? So, conditioned soul is sent to the material world for reforming his, the attitude, reforming his personality, develop his natural instinct of serving the Supreme Lord through devotional service, and all these beautiful arrangement is. And one who takes advantage of this arrangement, this is a very beautiful definition, is also called as a demigod or a civilized man. So one should take the advantage of the arrangement made by, offered by us. So there are so many beautiful arrangements. We see there is arrangement of we stay near temple, we have the association of the devotees. Just give me a second. So, uh, so this personality, they are also called as demigods because they are taking advantage of the arrangements of the Supreme Lord, right? So, Lord makes the arrangement personally himself through devotees, and devotees who take advantage of the arrangement of the Supreme Lord, they are called as, or they are also called as demigods. Further, Srila Prabhupada says the Lord's pastimes of protecting these personalities. Who are these personalities? Dvija, Go, Suranam are all transcendental. Whereas the material mundane literature just becomes very stale and becomes very static, needs to be constantly changed. That is not the case with the pastimes of the Lord. Just like Prabhupada says, when we read a newspaper, and within 1 hour, the newspaper just becomes a trash. It just becomes a raddi in next 1 hour. You just read it once and it's gone. 15 minutes, the newspaper becomes you just read it and it becomes outdated, and the material which is not to be reread once again. But that is not the case with the spiritual literature, especially Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, or Ramayana, Mahabharata. These are the literatures which are read by Dvijaha or civilized men for thousands of years. And Prabhupada says one can read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam practically every day and still derive new meaning and new realization by this meaning. And this is the case with also the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. So Vidura, being a very great devotee, he heard pastimes of Krishna so many, many times, right? But still, Vidura is again eager to hear these pastimes from Maitreya Muni. And this is the transcendental nature of Lord's glorious pastimes. That they never become stale, they are always ever fresh because they are non-different than Krishna. Nava Yauvanam Cha. Text 8. यैतत्त्वभेदै अधिलोकनाथो लोकानलोकान् सह लोकपालान् अचित्कृपत्यत्र हि सर्वसत्त्व निकायभेदाधिकृत प्रतीतः. Translation.
The Supreme King of all kings has created different planets and places of habitation where living entities are situated in terms of the modes of nature and work. And he has created their different kings and rulers. Purport. Lord Krishna is the chief king of all kings, and he has created different planets for all kinds of living entities. Even on this planet, there are different places for inhabitation by different types of men. There are places like deserts, icelands, and valleys in the mountainous countries. And in each of them, there are different kinds of men born of different modes of nature according to their past deeds. There are people in the Arabian deserts and in the valleys of the Himalayan mountains, and the inhabitants of these two places differ from one another, just as the inhabitants of the islands also differ from them. Similarly, there are also different planets. The planets below the earth down to the Patala planet are full of various kinds of living beings. No planet is vacant, as wrongly imagined by the modern so-called scientist. In the Bhagavad Gita, we find we find it said by the Lord that the living entities are sarvagata, are present in every sphere of life. So there is no doubt that on other planets there are also inhabitants like us, sometimes with greater intelligence and greater opulence. The living conditions for those of greater intelligence are more luxurious than on this earth. There are also planets where no sunlight reaches, and there are living entities who must live there due to their there are living entities who must live there due to their past deeds. All such plans for living conditions are made by the Supreme Lord, and Vidura requested Maitreya to describe this for the sake of further enlightenment.
So now Vidura says, the Supreme Lord is called as Adilokanatha. He is the king of all the kings, and he creates the different planets with different habitations of living entities. And this is how he creates different kings and the rulers. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the Lord is Adilokanatha, that is the king of all kings, and thus he creates the planets of all different varieties. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada makes very beautiful point. Srila Prabhupada says, just on this planet, there is such a huge variety. There is a desert and there is an Iceland. And there are living entities in the desert, there are living entities in the Iceland. And they may completely differ from each other. Just like there are people in the Arabian deserts, and there are people in the Himalayan mountains, and there are people living, Eskimos, on the Arctic places. And even within on this planet, there is such a huge variety, and then why you deny the variety across the universe? That people have this idea, no, only Earth has life and there is no life anywhere. Nowhere there is life. Everything is vacant. Only Earth has a life. Prabhupada says, no, Bhagavad Gita very clearly says, Jiva, the living, the soul are sarvagataha. Sarvagata means they are found everywhere. Even in the fire, there is a soul. Like there are fire bacteria. Even in the icy water, there are souls. Similarly, the living entities are present across the planetary systems. No planet is vacant. Prabhupada used to take a pot shot. Prabhupada used to say, except the brain of the modern scientist, nothing is vacant. So Prabhupada style. so there are places where the sunlight doesn't reach, Asurya Namate Loka, but there are also living entities. And not only there are living entities, there are living entities with far greater intelligence and greater opulence. In fact, when there is a description of the Sutala Loka, or when there is a description of the Naga Loka, one will be fascinated to see that description, that they excel the opulence found on the earthly planet, far, far millions of times greater. Although there is no sunlight, neither everything is illuminated by the Nagamani. So, Prabhupada says only the modern scientists have this idea that everything is vacant, but no planet is vacant. Just like within this planet, there is a great variety. Similarly, across the universe, there is a great variety of living entities which are far more intelligent and far more greater opulence. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
जय
Pura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhupada.
you,
Thank you,
Prabhupada.
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Prabhupada,
Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.